Hey girly, so in this video I just want to talk a little bit more about this situation that I'm going through. And if you watched my last video, you know that my current situation is really bad. I am staying in an Airbnb with my children. We do move around a lot with the Airbnbs. We're usually not able to stay in one Airbnb, for like a month or 2 months. So we've been just kind of moving around because the prices are always changing and I have to have the cheapest price. I also do Uber full time. I do not have a vehicle right now. I rent my vehicle through the Uber program. What else? Yeah, we're just kind of in a really bad situation right now. However, I am learning to still be grateful even through the really, really, really bad times when it feels so disgustingly bad. Like that's what it feels like right now. And it's not always the easiest thing to do. I think what helps me is getting up every day, putting on a face. I did my nails for the first time in a couple of weeks. That helps a lot. And I'm just kind of on a spiritual journey. Well, not kind of. I am on a spiritual journey right now. That is why I made this page, because I've been coming through, with some really good information that I've found here on YouTube. And that's something that I've been wanting to share. And it's really just made me feel so much better through this process. I've really been struggling a little bit with how to kind of put these videos together, because I want to make sure that I deliver you some, useful information. I think that, and I mentioned in the last video, it's very, very hard times out here. Like most people are struggling, and I think that we always get to see the outcome of what, the work that people put in, but we never get to see the journey. We never get to see like the beginning, like, the history of it. And that's something that I've been wanting to share. I want to share my process, my journey. And it is something that is very, very, very difficult for me because I am a private person. I'm not the type of person that likes to, showboat and just kind of give off this, idea of life that doesn't really exist for me. Like I'm not a pretender. Never been that. I just don't share, my personal struggles openly. Barely with my close friends. Definitely not with my family, but they're nosy as heck, so they find out. But it's just not something that I like to share. I just like to keep things to myself, and I go through it by myself, and then I just kind of like, just kind of come out of it, and without people even knowing that I was going through it in the first place. I just want to go through the beginning and give you just an overall view of I would say like the first 10 years of my adulthood, what that looked like for me. And it kind of will give you an idea of just the very beginning of my adult life to show you how I kind of end up in these, situations that I have been in multiple times over and over again. It's just something different about this time. But I'll get to that. So anyway, starting from the beginning, I got married when I was 20 years old. When I got married, I was already pregnant with my oldest daughter. I was 7 months pregnant. 7 months pregnant at the ceremony. I tried my best to just make the wedding as beautiful as possible, because I really believed at that time that this is one and done. Like I'm not doing weddings over again. So, I'm not doing marriage over again. Like we're in this, that's literally what I was thinking. Although neither of us really wanted to get married. We were forced into it. My family is very, very, very religious, and my mom was not about that life of me having a baby outside of wedlock. So she kind of organized the whole thing and put it together pretty much against our will. But that's another video for another time. That's what happened though. When we started out married, it was a one-sided partnership financially. He was not a helper financially in our marriage, and that is just the truth. He did not support us financially. I supported us financially, and that is the truth for the whole 10 years of marriage. So with that being said, as you can imagine, one income, 4 children, and one might ask why I continue to have children in this marriage. It's kind of complicated, but just the, I guess, short answer is I grew up Pentecostal. very, very, very conservative, holiness, religion. One of the things that we were taught is be fruitful and multiply. In our religion, it was not a thing to use contraception, and it was definitely not a thing to have abortions. So that was not something that we did or was able to do at that time. My family, my mom, they're all still religious and still goes to church and practice that religion. I do not. So my beliefs and what I do is completely different than what I grew up like just kind of learning. But at that time, in my early 20s, I had rejoined the church because I grew up in it. So I had rejoined the church. So I was also practicing that religion and those beliefs. So with that being said, I ended up with 4 kids. Now I will say, I never not used protection. I knew I was fertile. And I knew that if we were to not use anything to keep from having babies, I would probably have 12 kids. And that's just me being honest. So we did actually use contraceptions. But there was times that we was a little sloppy with it, not to be, too gross or TMI or whatever, but there were times that it just was not successful. And the times that it was not successful, I got a child of it. And I can remember each and every situation. So with that being said, one thing that I did not do against my religion is abortion. So I had my babies. I kept my babies. They're here. I love them dearly. And yeah, that's pretty much how I ended up with 4 children in a marriage that was not really ideal as far as like partnership and how it was supposed to work. So fast forward it, throughout those years, we did struggle a lot. We stayed with family multiple times because we were facing eviction more than several times. Anytime that we would face eviction, I would, as soon as they give me that letter to leave the premises, I literally would. We would pack up everything, put it in storage, and go stay with family. We would stay with family for maybe 6 to 9 months, and then we would get another place and then do our best to try to keep up with it. And then if we were facing eviction, we would have to go. Now I was saying that 10 years that happened twice. Ultimately, we ended up moving into a subsidized apartment complex, and that apartment complex allowed us to pay very, very minimum amount of rent. I think I was paying maybe $25 a month, really, really cheap. So that was clutch for me. So we ended up staying there for 5 years. Now, mind you, it was not the best neighborhood. This was kind of like in the hood. Some of them, some people called them projects. I lived in the city before I moved to that area. So for me, it was not that bad of a neighborhood. And those did not, to me, it wasn't a bad neighborhood, and those did not look like projects. But that's what it was. It was some riffraff that went through there. It was a lot of things that happened, some drug activity, a few shootings here and there. So yeah, it was a bad neighborhood. It's just I was comparing it to, some of the neighborhoods in Cincinnati, and this was kind of like in a city outside of Cincinnati. So for me, it was not as bad as some of the places that I've seen and lived in growing up. So that's where we lived. After a certain time, I did want to move. For me, living in a place like that was never, for me, I never wanted that to be the place where I just became comfortable. I was never one of those people who wanted to utilize the government to literally fund my life forever. I'm not judging people who do that. For me, it was not something that I wanted. I've always wanted better for me and my kids. Always. I've never wanted to rely on the government. And the reason that is the case is because I feel like when you have to rely on assistance, they have too much control over your life. Like nothing isn't your own. If you're on Section 8, they get to come in and do inspections and, tell you who all can live there, how many people can live there. The landlords get to have access to your home. If you receive food stamps or medical or anything like that, like all of the reporting of your income and just them needing to know everything. And I understand why they need to know that. But for me, it's always been uncomfortable. So I only really have utilized that when I've had to. And to be honest, I've always needed it. I've never not needed government assistance. But I've always pushed to get out of that system to where I don't need it. I've never wanted to stay. So, at that time, I started to get to a point where I wanted to, just kind of get out of it. So what I ended up doing is I started going to school. I started going to a university because I was going to obtain a degree, become a teacher so that me and my kids can get out of that. And my husband too, because we were still together. And at that time, I had not planned to leave him. What ended up happening, fast forward 5 years later, I ran out of aid just short of my last semester, and I was not able to obtain my degree. And a lot of things happened in my marriage at that time, a lot of things. So ultimately, I ended up getting a divorce. And just after the divorce, maybe about 2 months after he was moved out, or after the separation, I should say, just shortly after the separation, because the divorce was finalized a couple years later. But just short after the separation, I get a call from Section 8. Now, mind you, I had been on the Section 8 waiting list for about 5 years. The apartment that we were living in was HUD, so it wasn't Section 8, it wasn't the same thing. I wanted a Section 8 voucher, and the reason that I wanted a Section 8 voucher is because I've always been told that you can move with the Section 8 voucher. Like if I wanted to move to Hawaii, I could, just because it's another state. And I've always been the type of person to dream about leaving the state that I was born in. Never wanted to stay in Cincinnati. So I ended up getting a call from Section 8. Just down the street from where we lived, they were building these brand new townhouses, and they were so big, so beautiful, and we didn't know who they were for. We didn't know if they were senior homes. We didn't know if they were, gentrifying everything and making them for the rich people. We didn't know what they were doing. I just remember driving past them and seeing them like, oh, those are going to be so nice. So get a call from Section 8, and they basically said that those apartments, townhouses down the street are Section 8 housing program or project-based vouchers, and so they are trying to place families in them. And they asked me if I wanted a townhouse, and I said absolutely. So I was super, super excited, especially at that time, because I had just got out of that marriage, and I just felt like it was a new start for me and my kids. So fast forward to a year later, we're living in that house happily just fine. We end up staying in that house. Well, it's a townhouse, but it was a really, really big townhouse. But we ended up staying in those townhouses for about 3 years, living very happily. I had access to everything. I was in school at that time. We had a YMCA right across the street that kept my kids, fed them after school. Their school was also right across the street, so they could walk from school, walk to the center, and then the center would keep them till 6 o'clock. I would have late classes, and then I was able to come home, and then they would either already be there, or I would get there first, and then they would come home after. And everything was just great. Like, the community was cool. Like, everybody looked out for each other. And then I don't even know what happened, but something happened. They started digging through my file, and they told us that we were no longer qualified to stay there. So that was kind of like the beginning of things going really, really bad for me. They told us we had to go. I called Section 8 asking them to help me, because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they're making me leave. They didn't understand it either. So with the housing-based or project-based voucher, the way that works is that means that it's not a real voucher. You can't go anywhere with that voucher. It's for that specific apartment complex. So if you're not living in that apartment complex, you don't get a voucher to go anywhere else. It's just for that apartment complex. So when I called Section 8 and I told them what was going on, they totally did not agree with that either. They were confused. I think they even called up to that office to find out what was going on. And it was just something along the lines of, everyone can't be a student in the household at the same time. They were counting my children as students, and at the time they were all elementary school students. I was a college student, so they felt like, I don't know, that was just a rule at that time. So Section 8 couldn't do anything about it. So what Section 8 decided to do is give me an actual voucher to to find a place. I was grateful, but I did not want to leave my townhouse. We loved that townhouse. It was perfect for us. But we need to find a place. I tried to look for places. There was no places available in the town that I was living in, so we needed to move to the next town over, which the house was big and beautiful. We loved the house, but that city was way too far away from everything that we do. And then there's no jobs in that area, and I was no longer in school, so that made it really, really difficult. So that kind of began like the series of like, now that was a Section 8 voucher home, okay? What ended up happening was I tried to move it back into the city. Like at that point, like we stayed at the house for a year. I could not find work up that way. So I wanted to move back into the city. I knew that I could find a house in the city and I could find work in the city. I was going to transfer my Section 8 voucher from that town to Cincinnati. And after starting the process, I realized that they were really giving me the runaround. They were taking a long time. Even though I had already found a house, I found a landlord that would agree to do a Section 8 voucher. But Section 8 was really just taking their sweet time on getting everything approved, getting a person to do the inspection. And so I remember after 6 months of the runaround, that's how long it took, 6 months of just going back and forth, me calling up there so many times to kind of get them to, speed things up. I talked to a lady. She was not handling business, so I asked to speak to a supervisor. The supervisor gets on the phone, and she says, this is why it's so difficult to work with you people. The minute that she said you people, I lost it. I don't even go off on people, but I went off on her. Because what? And so I just felt like it was so disrespectful. I pretty much told them that they can take their Section 8 voucher and shove it. And I talked with the landlord, and I told him that I would just pay him rent, and I no longer had a Section 8 voucher. At the time, it felt really, really good. And I really, really hoping I didn't make a mistake. But that was like the beginning of me having to pay full rent by myself with 4 kids. That went on for years leading up till now, us having to move out of one space into another space, not being able to afford the rent. Some places getting eviction notices, other places not really getting an eviction notices, but getting pressure from the landlord. And so I would just move. I would just run because I couldn't. After being behind so many months, it was very, very difficult for me to, number one, face the landlord. And then number two, it was difficult for me to just kind of like accept that this was something that was happening in my life over and over again. And so I think for me, like, that has been the ongoing narrative for all of my 30s. I'm 43 now. It started happening when I was 30, and I'm 43 now. And that's been the narrative for the last 10 years. Just not being able to stay afloat, not being able to pay my rent, not being able to pay my bills. And honestly, I had gotten to a point where I was blaming everyone else around me. Like, everyone else around me. I'm like, my mom didn't show me how to do money. It's her fault. My mom pushed me into marriage. It's her fault. My dad wasn't around. It's his fault. I'm a black woman. It's society's fault. Black people are oppressed. It's society's fault. And all of these things can be true. But what I didn't realize is that that's a mindset. That's a mindset that is not going to get me anywhere. So one of the things that I kind of like had to tell myself at some point is that in order to make a change, I really have to make a change within myself. That is not something that I came to overnight. That is something that took years and years and years of finally kind of like, having like a moment of like, oh my gosh, like, this makes sense. Why haven't I thought about this? But that just happened as of recent, like the last 3 weeks. Like, that's when that kind of came to me. Up until now, I still was clueless as to why my life is like, beginning of this year, I came to a point, I'm like, things have to change. I don't know how things are going to change, but I know I need to just work harder and do more. I knew that. But I've done that so many times. And I'm just like, why isn't things clicking to where we can consistently be happy, financially happy, in a stable home, even as a single mom. I've seen other people do it. Like, why not me? And that was just something that I just had a hard time with. So I know for me, like, that struggle that I have been going through for the last 10 years has been, I would even say the last 20, because I was married for half of it, and I struggled in that marriage too. I struggled even worse outside of the marriage, but I struggled in the marriage too. The marriage was not a walk in the park at all. I was going through a lot of the same things that I'm going through now, but I had a person who was not helping financially. So that just made it so much more difficult. And so what happens when you have 20 years worth of financial damage and hardship, you end up in a place of hopelessness. And I've always been a hopeful person. I do not want to get emotional, because I've always been a hopeful person, very optimistic. I've always been confident in my abilities and of what I'm able to contribute to this world to be successful. I have the brain skill, like I know how to do it. And for some reason, something was not clicking. And so I had to really dive deep in this last 6 months to really try to get an understanding of what is wrong and what I'm supposed to do to fix it. Because right now, we're at a place where we are physically living in a situation that is not sustainable for anyone. To be paying week by week for a place to stay, to keep a roof over your head, to be, paying a really expensive car note through Uber just to have wheels, to be having to do 12-hour days every day. I work 12-hour days every day. And I promise you I'm okay now, because I'm doing the work and I understand why things are like this. And like I said, I do want to explain it to you all what I have been learning, and I want to, that's really what I'm finding that I'm starting to be passionate about. Is like I found out what I need to do, and now I want to share it. And now I have every confidence in the world that I'm going to achieve the things that I want to achieve, that I'm meant to achieve, that I'm meant to have for me and my kids. And that's why I want to make these videos. I want to put it as like a journal, like a verbal journal every day, and just kind of share it until I manifest the life that I want, the life that I deserve and my children deserve. And we will have that. So I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the shift, the mindset shift, and this series of situations that happened to me this year that led me to where I am now. And I'm really excited. I really truly am. I'm really excited to talk about it and to start sharing some of the things that I've been dealing with. I feel super late to the game about it, but I'm just happy I'm coming to it, and I'm happy that it seems to be working out for me. And like I said, I have not a doubt in my mind that it will work out. Our physical situation will work out. So anyway, I will talk to you on my next video. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to do my best to try to keep the videos as short as possible. But this is more like a podcast. I'm sorry, it's not the typical podcast situation. This is all I have right now. I don't have a studio. I don't have a room to do these videos in. I very much so don't want to be, doing these videos and talking about this stuff in front of my kids, even though they're aware of the situation and aware of, things that I've gone through. I still don't yet feel comfortable, obviously doing a whole podcast while they're, kind of horse playing behind me. So until my situation changes to where I have a place to, actually set up a nice situation for me to do these videos, it will be done in my car. So be patient with me. And I thank you, the ones who have been subscribing and the ones who've been commenting. Thank you so much. Like, I posted that video and I honestly did not expect to get 1 view. So the fact that, I don't even know, last time I checked it was like 32 views. I'm like, oh my gosh, people, they're watching this, and I'm getting feedback, and I'm so grateful. because if I can help at least one person, if one person resonates from the things that I'm saying, the stories that I'm telling, I will be so grateful. If one person is able to use some of the tools that I'm learning to change my situation, I will be so grateful. I really, really want to be a part of, the people who are the group of people who are trying to change what social media looks like for all of us. It does not have to be an unhealthy obsession. It can be something that is really useful for us. It can be something that can be, something that we can learn and grow from, or use to learn and grow from. So for me, that's what I want. And like I said, it is a podcast, so some of my videos will be longer. But like I said, if you're here to watch and listen and interact, please do. And I'm so grateful for you being here, and thank you so much for listening. And I will be doing a part 2 to this, talking more about the mindset shift and all the things that happened this year that kind of led me to that. So I will talk about that on my next video. Thank you so much, and talk to you later.